The 2024 postseason in MLB was incredible, the best playoff run we've had in years, and I thought, what a fitting way to end my season of coverage by just giving you the most in-depth recap of this year's playoffs.
Also, hi, me from the future currently editing the video that you're watching. I somehow forgot to mention that a lot of the research in this video is credited to Sarah Langs, who does a fantastic job. Go follow her. She's the best. Links to her profile down below. And back to the video.
The first game of this year's playoffs was the Tigers and the Astros. Kind of a weird matchup considering the Astros were, 10 games back of the AL West standings and still managed to win the division, and the Detroit Tigers literally sold at this year's deadline. In fact, the biggest piece that they sold was on the #1 seed in the National League. We'll get to that. Shockingly enough, 2024 was the year where the Astros' run of ALCS appearances finally came to an end in the wild card round. Tarek Skubal announced his presence as the American League Cy Young with a dominant start, 6 shutout innings and 6 strikeouts, and their bullpen, which will become a big storyline, allowed just 2 runs and gave them the win. This win was shocking for many, especially when you put it in the scope of playoff experience. Obviously, the Astros are here every year, and basically everyone in their lineup has double-digit plate appearances in the playoffs. As for the Tigers, Matt Vierling was the only player on their roster that had been to the playoffs before. They're the first team with 1 or 0 players with postseason experience on a postseason roster since the 2002 Angels, who only had Kevin Apier, their #3 starter, be in the postseason prior to that run. They, of course, went on to win the World Series, but the Tigers wouldn't share that fate. The other American League matchup was probably the most disappointing between the Baltimore Orioles and the Kansas City Royals. The Orioles, who competed for the AL East Division title all year long, managed just 1 run in 2 games against the Royals, losing both games by 1 run. Game 1 was a pitching masterclass between Cole Ragans and Corbin Burns. Cole Ragans dealt 6 shutout innings, while Corbin Burns did everything he could to get this Orioles team a win. He's the first starter to throw a pitch in the 9th inning of a postseason game since Steven Strasburg did in the 2019 World Series 5 years ago. Suffice to say, if I'm Corbin Burns, I'm probably pretty frustrated with my team's performance here, and if I'm in free agency, that might affect my decision. But yeah, both AL wildcard series were kind of disappointing. In the National League, the San Diego Padres took care of business with a 2-0 sweep over the Atlanta Braves. The shorthanded Braves sent out AJ Smith-Shawver for the start, and it didn't go well.
He shouldn't have done that. He's just a boy. Poor little feller.
And on the other side, Michael King didn't walk a single batter in 7 shutout innings and struck out 12 dudes. He set a Padres record for the 2nd most strikeouts in a single playoff game, only outdone by the legendary performance of 1998 Kevin Brown. In fact, it's the 4th most strikeouts of any postseason debut in the wildcard era, dating back to 1995. Ahead of him was 2015 Jacob deGrom, Tim Lincecum in 2010, and 1997 Livan Hernandez, who benefited from a wide Eric Gregg strike zone to strike out 15 batters.
What? No, dude!
Michael King's performance was historic, and it enabled the Padres to take a series lead that they wouldn't relinquish. The Juan Soto trade isn't that bad, guys. But if you're a baseball fan, you know that the real fireworks of the wildcard round were in the Mets versus Brewers matchup. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a little bit biased. Much of the Mets' success this season came from the emergence of Jose Iglesias, who played in his first playoff game in 4,000 days. The only other player to go this long without a postseason appearance is Ichiro Suzuki from 2001 to 2012. Down 2-0 and 4-3 at separate times in this game, the Mets stormed back for a comeback victory in Game 1 to win 8-4. In Game 2, the Mets scored first and led 3-2 in the 8th inning before a bullpen implosion gave the Brewers a miraculous win. And in that Game 3, we would be scoreless through 6 innings, thanks in part to Tobias Myers, who dealt 5 scoreless frames in an elimination game as a rookie. He was the first rookie pitcher to do that in over 100 years, and the crazy part is that this would happen again in this year's playoff run. The Brewers finally broke through in the 7th inning off Jose Budo with back-to-back home runs from Jake Bowers and Sal Frelick of all people.
When is it my turn to be happy? When?
Whoa. We went to the 9th inning still in a 2-0 game, and the Mets were just 2 outs away from their season being over, bringing up Pete Alonso. In the game prior, Pete Alonso tripped on his own bat running to first base, and then in the inning prior to this at-bat, Pete Alonso dropped a foul fly ball and had Brewers fans laughing in his face. It had been a rough season and even a rough postseason for Pete Alonso, but all of that went away with one big swing of the bat. On a 3-1 pitch, Pete Alonso crushed a Devin Williams changeup for a go-ahead 3-run homer, giving the Mets an improbable 3-2 lead. And in the 9th inning, the Mets doubled up the fastest player on the Brewers team, Bryce Terang, to turn a double play and clinch a wildcard series victory against all odds. Pete Alonso's home run was the 10th go-ahead home run in the 9th inning or later of an elimination game in postseason history, but the first where his team was trailing somehow. Williams threw his changeup 176 times this year, and this was the first time it was hit for a home run. And I mean, just to put it in scope of how improbable this Mets run had been, just take a look at their travel schedule the past 2 weeks. The Mets went to Atlanta for a 3-game series, but then the last 2 games of that series got rained out, so they went to Milwaukee, lost the first 2 games there, saved their season on a Sunday, then went back to Atlanta with no layover, played a doubleheader, won the first game and clinched a playoff spot, and then after that doubleheader immediately flew to Milwaukee the next day to start the wildcard series where they won 2 out of 3. Then they flew to Philadelphia with just 1 off day and immediately played again. But it didn't start off very well for the Mets. Kyle Schwarber hit a leadoff home run off Kodai Senga, the 5th leadoff home run of his postseason career, which is 2 more than any other player in baseball history. And Zach Wheeler was determined to give the Phillies a 1-0 series lead. He registered 30 whiffs in 7 scoreless innings. It's the 3rd most in a postseason game under pitch tracking since 2008. The Mets put together another comeback victory, this time against the Phillies bullpen, putting up 6 runs in the final 2 innings to win Game 1 6-2. The Mets became just the 8th team to win back-to-back playoff games when trailing in the 8th inning or later. And in fact, they were the first to do so since the 2015 Royals, who did it in the World Series against the Mets. But the Mets bullpen showed cracks in their armor once again when Edwin Diaz blew the lead and Tyler McGill gave up the walk-off hit in the 9th inning to even the series 1 win apiece. Back at Citi Field, the Mets took care of business with some long balls against Aaron Nola and a dominant start from their ace Sean Manaea, who pitched 7 innings of 1-run ball. And I was there for it, and I kept my cool. You know, I always keep myself calm and collected. I don't end up screaming at strangers or anything. That's just not my game. Game 4 was extremely tense with the Phillies leading 1-0 through 5 innings. Up steps Francisco Lindor, who already had one pretty notable playoff grand slam in his book. He would hit another one here to give the Mets a 4-1 lead that they wouldn't relinquish. He became the 3rd player ever with multiple playoff grand slams in their career, joining Shane Victorino and Jim Thome. After Jose Quintana pitched another scoreless outing on the mound, the Mets bullpen took care of business to finish off an improbable 3-1 series victory over the number 2 seeded team in the National League. The Mets are headed to the NLCS. As for who they'd be facing, it'd be a battle between 2 titans, arguably maybe the 2 best teams in baseball. The fireworks came immediately for baseball's best rivalry. The Padres stormed out to an early 3-0 lead thanks to Manny Machado's 2-run homer, only to have that lead erased on an emphatic 3-run bomb by Shohei Ohtani. Game 1 was a back-and-forth affair with multiple lead changes, but in the end, the Dodgers bullpen was too much for the Padres and they held on 7-5. But everyone was talking about Game 2. The Padres hit 6 home runs in their Game 2 victory, which was an MLB postseason record, tied with the Phillies in Game 3 of the 2023 Division Series and the Cubs in the same setting in 2015. Jurickson Profar robbed a home run, some Dodgers fans threw some stuff at Fernando Tatis Jr., and the Padres dominated the Dodgers on their home turf for a 10-2 win to even the series. Back home, the offense stayed hot with a 6-run second inning off Walker Buehler, capped off by this absolute nuke by Fernando Tatis Jr. I thought this game was going to be another Padres-dominated victory until Teoscar Hernandez hit a grand slam, but this time the Padres bullpen got the opportunity to shine, dealing 4 scoreless innings to end the game and clinch a 6-5 series win. But despite scoring 21 runs in the first 3 games of this series, the story would become a scoreless streak for the Dodgers pitching staff. After that 6-run second inning, the Padres didn't score for the next 6 innings. Then they didn't score at all in Game 4, getting shut out in an 8-0 win for the Dodgers. The Dodgers used 8 bullpen arms to get the job done, and this would become a consistent theme in their playoff run. In Game 5, Yoshinobu Yamamoto got the ball and dealt 5 scoreless innings, becoming the first pitcher since Tobias Myers, like a week before, to do that as a rookie in an elimination game. The Padres had no answer for the Dodgers bullpen. The Dodgers retired the last 19 batters they faced. This year's Division Series were packed with competition. 2024 was the first time in Division Series history where the first 2 games were split in all 4 matchups. A matchup between surprise AL Central teams would take us to 5 games as well. Cleveland dominated Game 1 with a 5-run first inning, but then the Tigers bounced right back to win 3-0 in Game 2, dealing a shutout of their own, capped off by Kerry Carpenter's improbable 3-run homer off Emmanuel Clase to give the Tigers a late lead. Carpenter became the first Detroit player with a go-ahead home run in the 9th inning of a playoff game since Maglio Ordonez won the 2006 championship series with a grand slam. Game 3 had the exact same score on the Tigers' home turf as they won 3-0 yet again. The Tigers led in the 7th inning of Game 4. David Fry delivered the Guardians a must-have lead with a 2-run bomb. The Guardians would hang on 5-4 to force Game 5 back on their turf. Fry's go-ahead home run in the 7th inning was just the 3rd such home run that late in a game in the last 20 years, with Pete Alonso doing it a week prior and Howie Kendrick doing it in the 7th game of the 2019 World Series. And in that Game 5, 5, Tarek Skubal finally became human, giving up this grand slam to Lane Thomas to give the Guardians a 5-1 lead. This would be too much for the Tigers to overcome as the Guardians won 7-3 and advanced to the ALCS in Cleveland. And this takes us to our final division series matchup between the Yankees and the Royals, which had some close games but just wasn't as eventful as the other division series. All those tight victories were thanks in part to their bullpen, as Clay Holmes, Luke Weaver, Tommy Kahnle, Ian Hamilton, Tim Hill, Tim Meza, and Jake Cousins combined for 15 2/3 scoreless innings out of their bullpen. That was really the story of this series, as the Yankees just took care of business and advanced to the ALCS. As for our CS matchups, two teams were led by Stephen Vogt and Carlos Mendoza, rookie managers. It was actually the first time that two rookie managers managed in the LCS in the same year. Starting in the National League once again, this was a lopsided affair. The Dodgers took this series in 6 games, and every game they won, they really put the hammer down with their offense. Game 1 was a 9-0 victory and a Jack Flaherty masterclass, but in their bullpen game in Game 2, the Mets came back and won a game, off the back of this Mark Vientos grand slam in the second inning. But on their home turf, the Mets dropped Game 3 8-0, and in a must-have win to even the series yet again, they dropped Game 4 by a final score of 10-2. This was the Dodgers' 4th win of 8 or more runs in the playoffs already, tied with the 2007 Red Sox for the most in a single postseason. In Game 5, the Mets fought back to force the series back to LA off the back of this Pete Alonso 3-run bomb. See how low this pitch is? It's actually the second lowest pitch that's ever been homered on in an MLB playoff run since 2008. The only player to hit a home run off a lower pitch was another Met, Daniel Murphy, in 2015. But in the end, the relentless nature of the Dodgers bullpen and their lineup was too much for the New York Mets as they dropped Game 6 10-5, losing the series in 6 games. As the Dodgers advanced to the World Series with relative ease, the New York Yankees fought for their lives on a ton of close games in their matchup. The big story here was Giancarlo Stanton, who had 4 hits in this playoff series, but all of them were home runs. Not counting his World Series at-bats, Giancarlo Stanton had 16 home runs in 36 career postseason games at the end of this ALCS, the most by a player in his first 36 games. In Game 1, the Yankees didn't really need the long ball though, because the Guardians kind of just gave them the win. Joey Cantillo had a pair of wild pitches that induced runs, and the Yankees just took care of business from there. Back over in Cleveland, up 2-0 in the series, the Yankees were 4 outs away from seizing a 3-0 lead in the series before John Kenzie Noel hit a 2-run pinch hit bomb off Luke Weaver. This paved the way for another David Fry heroic moment as he punched a 2-run walk-off home run in the 10th inning off Clay Holmes. But Giancarlo Stanton wasn't going to let this series win get away from him. This one would also go to extra innings where Juan Soto delivered his signature moment for the Yankees, a 3-run bomb to dead center field in the 10th inning to give the Yankees a 5-2 win. The Yankees and the Dodgers are matching up in the World Series. Just to show you how important this series is on a grander scale, it's actually the first time 2 #1 seeds advanced to the World Series since 2020, which also featured the Dodgers. It was the first matchup of 2 players that are going to win the MVP in the World Series since 2012, when Buster Posey and Miguel Cabrera matched up. The Dodgers got to Garrett Cole first with a 5th inning sacrifice fly, but Giancarlo Stanton delivered a moonshot into the night for a 2-1 lead in the 6th inning. Stanton actually broke his own record set in 2020 with 5 consecutive hits that went for home runs, which has only been done by one other player, Bob Robertson in 1971, who kind of sounds like a name I just made up. The Yankees held that lead close into the 8th inning when a Shohei Ohtani double was misplayed by the Yankees defense, allowing him to advance to 3rd and score on a sacrifice fly. This forced extra innings. The Yankees, just 2 outs away from winning this Game 1 on the road, brought in Nestor Cortes to face the top of the Dodgers order. Cortes had some pretty competitive quotes about appearing on this Yankees roster, but he hadn't pitched in a game since September 18th. But it only took 1 pitch for him to get Shohei Ohtani out, setting up an empty base for Mookie Betts to be walked on, and a matchup with Freddie Freeman. Bases loaded, 2 outs, 10th inning of a World Series game, your team's down a run, what do you do? How about a walk-off grand slam? This was just the 2nd walk-off grand slam in MLB postseason history, so a devastating loss for the Yankees, and unfortunately for them, this basically just activated Freddie Freeman. The Dodgers torched Carlos Rodon with the long ball, with Tommy Edman, Teoscar Hernandez, and hey look, Freddie Freeman punching home runs to give the Dodgers a 4-1 lead. Their bullpen fully handled the Yankees, allowing just 1 run over the final 3 innings. The Dodgers won that game 4-2, and then they won Game 3 4-2 as well. This time it was Walker Buehler dominating with 5 shutout innings, with the Yankees unable to score until their final strike of the game, where Alex Verdugo hit this 2-run homer. Insert Chris Paul meme here. But in the end, everyone kind of knew this was the Dodgers World Series to lose, and they finished this one off in quick fashion. Thus concluding the 2024 MLB season. What a season it was. I'm already so excited for this year's free agent class. It's going to be an absolute frenzy. And I want to thank you guys for watching my content all year long. I love baseball. I figure you probably do as well. And thank you for enabling me to work at my dream job and deliver this content for you. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching it all the way through. And if you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and even subscribing to the Jolly Off channel. I'd really appreciate it. That'll do it for me, and that'll do it for 2024 MLB. I'll see you guys next time.